Now, in our second session, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Silvia Montoya with her presentation titled The Role of Learning Assessment Data in Achieving the Learning Goal of Education 2030 Agenda. Dr. Silvia Montoya is the director of the UNESCO Institute of Statistics. Since the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, Dr. Montoya has taken a leadership role within the international education community by helping to build consensus around the standards, methodologies, and indicators needed to measure progress towards Education 2030. She has also launched the Global Alliance to Monitor Learning and serves as the co-chair of the Technical Cooperation Group on SDG4 Education 2030 Indicators. Prior to joining the UIS in 2015, Silvia was the Director General of and Evaluation of Education Quality at the Ministry of Education, Buenos Aires, where she oversaw the creation of the first comprehensive education quality index produced in Argentina. Dr. Silvia.
Thank you very much. Let's see if I am. It's a really a great pleasure to be with you today and to hear for such an exciting panel to be and to hear all the progress you have made. And I would like to actually to share and to have this conversation about the 2030 agenda. What are the objectives that are actually tracking SDG4, and try to see how the international community has agreed on the measurement of indicators to try to monitor on the learning and skills of kids and youths and adults. So we really want to depart from these big numbers that are related to the size of the global crisis. I think that it's always good that we keep in mind of how many kids and youths we're talking that are not able to read and to dominate even very simple skills, as doing very simple math operation or to read paragraph and to extract the meaning of that. Unfortunately, we know that from those kids, 2/3 of them are in schools, and this is actually a huge problem for us to ask and to wonder how we can improve our policy making and our teaching and learning process in the way we have been this year in particularly affected by a new phenomenon that is actually affecting all over the globe the kids and youth and actually challenging our lives. But just to get an idea, is like to get a sense of what is does it feel to read poorly. This is a real case and the speed. We have actually given the same paragraph to kids in one group of countries OECD, and you have in the low-income countries. And this is exactly, after all, the moment that the kids in the low-income countries reach the same level of progress that the kids in developed countries. That is one of the first way of actually getting a sense. And just to have a clear visualization of what are the skills that the kids are not able to master. For instance, the kids in low-income countries cannot identify what is the number that is missing in that sequence. It's a clear example coming from real life that shows what is the type of skills that we talk, and we know that they are not too sophisticated, but still they are for some part of the kids. So with that, actually as an answer to that, the SDG4 agenda has come in education to try to look at all the abilities, to look at to have the relevant skills. And now we know that the relevant skills are not only reading and mathematics, but there are other technical and vocational skills that allow us to have a decent life, a decent employment. But it means a lot of diversity that goes beyond identifying a number in a sequence. For this reason, we have 10 targets in SDG4, and we look at the lifelong cycle. We go from pre-primary to primary education to secondary to higher education. We talk about the connection to work and the levels of literacy and numeracy in adult population, as well as the environment where those skills are created. So it's a comprehensive agenda, and within that, we have the data measurement are key to that. And just focusing specifically on the learning assessment and skills, we have various indicators that are in the Sustainable Development 4 that are related to measurement skills and learning. We have in early childhood the pre-primary education where the kids are developmentally on track. That means the socio-emotional and cognitive skills as well to be prepared to start schools. Then we have basic education that we look at different moments in the schooling process, but we also look at technical skills. We look at ICT skills. Can we manage mobiles, computers? Can we drop files? Can we have more sophisticated skills? But also we look how we relate to others and how we relate to the environment, what kind of skills we need to have, what behavioral kind of attitudes we have towards the environment and to sciences that are very important, and also to the cultural aspect and to citizenship, how we live with each other, how we do respect the other in terms of the differences and the diversity. And unfortunately, we have made some exercises with the colleagues in the international community in trying to understand how is the work going with these numbers that we have about the measurement and the data we have. And so we know that we're really not evolving very well towards the progress we have promised, that by 2030 we will have, for instance, in target 4.1, that all the kids and youth in basic education are going to have the basic set of skills. The projections show, if you see the blue line, that on average we're going to be more or less as we're today. Eventually we're going to include more kids, but as they include, we need to have more talent to develop the set of skills. But we need to grow at the rate that is a gray line, while we're going at the green at the level of the blue line, and taking the country that has done the best in the last decade. In the best case, we're going to go like as an orange line. So we really have a deficit, we have a gap, and in some cases we don't even have a measurement to make those projections. If we go to early childhood, we also see that clearly there is a difference between the countries. We see early childhood or pre-primary education as a way to prepare our kids to enter the basic education and the rest of the learning process. And we see that there are huge differences between different regions of the world. And it's a call for looking at that and to try to see that it depends not only on one country, it's at the international community level that we need to develop those skills. We also know regarding ICT skills, we know that technology is important, and the COVID-19 has put at the center of the table how important is technology. Not only the access, but also to be able to use in an effective way, to be interacting, to be able to actually to manage a more sophisticated set of skills. The information of the indicator that collects on those set of skills in youth and adult population are showing that also we have an important number of population in the world, according to numbers, that manage skills that are a basic level, to turn off a phone, to turn off a computer, to eventually look and explore it. But when we turn to more sophisticated skills, preparing a presentation, doing a kind of more sophisticated edition in documents, or just getting into other difficult tasks, then we reduce the proportion of the population, and this is basically located in the most developed countries or the high-income countries. So this shows, and the projections are really not allowing us to be too optimistic. And then we look at the central factor in the teaching and learning process that are teachers. We see that we aspire to have qualified teachers for every child in the world, and we could see that this indicator is not even going in the right direction. We see that in some regions we're going, and the trend in the last decade has been towards a decrease in the proportion of teachers that are qualified, and we know how important it is in the current circumstances. So numbers are important, data are important, and really are showing to us that we need to actually to go. And this is one point that I really wanted to raise, is that still we lack a lot of information. If we have as a reference a little bit over 200 countries in the world, and we're lacking information for 80 about basic education skills, we're really in a difficult situation to even understand how to help and how to deal to drive the right policies. We know that we need to find a way to compare better different sources of information, but this is one step that follows to the measurement, and there is a lot of effort to try to see how we use the different sources, how we use national assessment, how international assessment could be equated between the different initiatives, the ones that the colleagues are having from the OECD, the ones that IEA with team and peers are having. How do they express them in a comparative way? This is a part of efforts that we're doing. And we need also that one of the limitations is that we're not looking at all the range of diversity of skills. We have still a main focus on reading and mathematics and a few other cognitive domains, like some knowledge about the air sciences and some knowledge about the global citizenship, and some knowledge about digital skills, but we're still not looking at a broader set of skills that are explaining and helping us to understand how to make a country progress. And there is a little bit, not too much investment in assessing some other skills that are critical, such as creativity, sort of non-cognitive domains, that are very important also as part of the integral and comprehensive development of the kids. And so we know that there are in some of the cases duplication of effort, that we're really not clear how much they cost, that in some of the cases we need to produce more global public goods that are going to be making easier for many countries to measure learning assessment and results, but these are part of the issues that we really need to address as a community. And we know that data is very important. We know that data we have just been hearing, but we have a system level assessment. If we look at the country and we look at the different tools in a systemic way, we know that we need to monitor what are the standards. We have been hearing about protection to privacy data. So we need that guidelines and a guiding framework and operating framework is important. So the systemic level is important, and we need to understand about curriculums, about how the system are evaluating all the different actors. So this is really not that much spread. And we know that at the school and student level, the assessment could provide us information about how the school is doing, what aspect of the schooling to improve, is the environment, is the lack of resources, is the management level, is the teaching level, and we need to have the information about the learning outcomes that are the result of the school, and we need that information for taking decisions, and we need to expand the measurement, and we need to have the data to understand what is happening. So we already know also that there are very good impact of having information. This is actually taking on the use of data coming from the international assessment that has been going through decades, like OECD, PISAs, and IEA's team and peers. And there is an identification that when the country has been using that information, it has positive impact in various dimensions, including the outcomes of the student. It has driven, in some cases, curriculum reforms. It has been enacted the improvement and the establishment of monitoring system at the country level. So we know that it has been a positive effect coming from there. And we know that always the countries are going to have to face choices. Should I do a national assessment, or should I join the cross-national assessment if I have a limitation of resources? As always, there are pros and cons about each of the options. There are ownership issues. There are a huge investment in human capacity at the human level in the international assessment to allow a comparability and to allow good quality and the implementation of standards. But we know that this question tag about should I do national or cross-national is still part of the guidance the international community needs. So we know that to progress towards DG4, we really need to actually try to focus on an approach that is looking beyond the average and trying to look at how are all the countries doing, and within the country, how the different segments of the population are doing, that look at quality and learning. For this reason, learning assessment are important because the educational system speak of the quality of the students they are preparing to actually to face the 21st century, that we have going over reading and mathematics only and trying to incorporate other domains, to try to have a long life approach to the measurement, not only looking at one point, but looking at different moments, because eventually we're doing well in one level and we're not doing well in the other level. And to try to talk and to work with other sectors. This is one of the big drivers of the Sustainable Development Goals, are these cross-collaboration and interlinkages. And then we need also to talk and to work closely with regional and global collaboration with our peers of the countries to learn from each other, to try to see what we can learn at the regional level, what we could learn at the global level. So we really need that, we know that we need a further investment into methodologies and the investment to help the countries to measure learning assessment. We have already identified those numbers. We know that the countries are still 25%, a quarter of the countries are still investing less than 4% of the GDP. That was the minimum level that the Education Framework for Action was requesting the countries as an agreement by all ministers of education of the planet. So we know that we have a lot to do, and we have to actually to try to improve the data. So learning assessment are critical, and we know from the experience that they are making a huge contribution to a better understanding of how an educational system works and how to have better skills in the country. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you our thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. So one thing that you mentioned that caught my attention in the middle of your presentation was a point that you made, is that sometimes there is time gaps. So how does this affect the systems evaluation? If there is a major time gap, like the example that you mentioned, it could be up to 6 years in the example that you mentioned. So how does this affect the policy making? Is it going to be time sensitive?
Yeah, I mean, this is actually, thank you so much, Sattam. Is really very good question. We really recommend that the periodicity in the measurement is not less than 3 years. Really, for this reason, we have the major international assessment that are actually done in a regular basis, trying to follow this. We know that we cannot change from 1 year to the other a policy and have an impact, but at the same time, we need to have time bounded and to have an impact. We have ways of simulation, and there is where international artificial intelligence and other aspects could help us to understand and to do simulation, but we really, for the policymaker and for understanding of the system and for the engagement at the country level, we really need that the countries are adopting, and this is a recommendation of the international community, to try to have at least every 3 years a measurement, and this is how we have to look. That is not one shot, but a lifelong compromise, also a commitment from the countries to measurement.
Great. One thing that you also mentioned in your presentation, you mentioned cognitive skills. Do you think cognitive skills or soft skills should contribute or should be used in a global benchmark? And are there examples of such benchmark? And how can we actually measure that, those cognitive, how can we measure those skills, the soft and cognitive skills?
Yes, I think actually this is one of the aspects that I think that we have we need development. We have in the cognitive dimension, there is an agreement, and we have an agreement of a few indicators in the framework that are going to be measurement and have a definition of a regional level. And this is a conversation that is happening this year in terms of setting benchmark at the regional level. We have that the European Union has done a good effort in actually progressing towards that with a few indicators. But the aspect of the non-cognitive and the socio-emotional and these soft skills is an area that still is under development. There are obviously very good progress, but still we're actually coming to terms to what are the ones that could be measured in a comparable way. I think that there is already an identification. Colleagues obviously here in the panel from OECD has done an effort towards developing some of those tools, but still the international community needs to agree on this. But I think that this is a very relevant aspect. And now we see that during this 2020 with the challenge of the COVID-19, that these are more important than ever.
Sure, thank you so much again, Dr. Silvia.